Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the region that was on the agreement that was signed in Addis Ababa on the 24th February 2013. Of course, this meeting takes place against the backdrop of our commemoration of the 50th anniversary, which indeed is an important moment of reflection and rededication, and of course, for us to make significant steps towards 2063, peace and security is a critical component. And amongst the pledges for the future, we undertook not to bequeath wars to the next generation of Africans. The conflict in the Great Lakes and finding lasting solutions was an expression of our collective awareness, solidarity, and a shared responsibility. It illustrated the commitment of all in the regions to make renewed efforts to peace and a better life for all the people of the region. It generated hope for the people of the region that had more than their fair share of violence and conflicts. It also generated hope amongst ordinary people in that area, especially women and children. We therefore have to build on those hopes in order to realize our shared goal of peace, security, stability, and development in the Great Lakes region. As we gather here today, I have no doubt that each of the leaders who are signatories would endeavor to fulfill the commitment made. In this respect, allow me to welcome the establishment by the DRC authorities of their national oversight mechanism. On its part, the African Union will spare no effort in supporting the regional efforts. The AU Peace and Security Council welcomes the signing of the framework agreement and recently undertook a mission to the DRC, including the eastern part of the country, to assess the situation on the ground and determine support to the ongoing efforts in both the DRC and the region as a whole. And the African Union, notably through the special representatives of the Great Lakes, Ambassador Boubacar Gassou Diarra, will continue to closely work with the International Conference of the Great Lakes region and the Southern African Development Community, as well as with the United Nations and other international stakeholders in the spirit of partnership. I would also like to congratulate and welcome Her Excellency Mary Robinson on her appointment as a Special Envoy of the UN Secretary General. Her experience and commitment will undoubtedly contribute towards sustaining the momentum for peace and help mobilize international support. Essentially, the objective of this meeting is to reach an understanding on the process for the development of benchmarks for the implementation of the framework. It is also an opportunity for all signatory parties to update each other on the steps that have been taken since the signing of the framework. We are confident that we will emerge from this meeting with renewed determination and commitment to implement the framework, both in letter and in spirit. In so doing, we must keep in mind the ultimate goal of all our interventions to allow the people of the Great Lakes to live in harmony and peace, to use the proceeds from their natural resources to build infrastructure, social services, and contribute towards a shared prosperity, to participate in development of their own country. It is therefore critical that in all our endeavors, we involve women and youth as drivers of peace, transformation, and prosperity. And lastly, when I was in Washington, the president of the World Bank expressed a great desire to get involved in terms of the development side in the DRC and in the Great Lakes region as a whole. So we hope as we implement this, we will always also look at that balance of peace and development. So I would like to, in conclusion, commend the Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, for his continued commitment in this process. And whilst I thank you, I also give him the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Honorable Ministers, dear colleagues, and also particularly I thank the participants from permanent members of the Security Council and also European Union and many other supporting countries for peace and security and development of Africa. I'd like to first of all thank Dr. Dlamini Zuma for co-organizing this first meeting of the 11+4 regional oversight mechanism of the peace, security and cooperation framework for the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the region. I also thank all the African leaders and other participants for attending this important event. As you are aware, I am coming from, after concluding very successful visit to 4 countries before coming to Addis Ababa, starting from Mozambique, DRC, Rwanda, and Uganda. The main purpose of my visit in these 5 African countries, including Ethiopia, is to focus on this framework agreement which you signed on February 24th. And I thank all distinguished respective heads of state and foreign ministers and governments for their full cooperation and also hospitality, and more importantly, their strong commitment and leadership commitment to ensure that this framework will be implemented at their national, regional levels. Mesdames et Messieurs, hier, nous avons célébré le 50e anniversaire de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine au cours d'une cérémonie qui a affirmé de façon poignante le potentiel du continent. Aujourd'hui, nous adressons l'un des défis majeurs du passé, du présent,
of the present and of the future of the African continent. The situation in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. In this region, the population continues to be victims of suffering, unimaginable suffering. This recurrent violence has been going on for a long time. That is why we signed the 4th agreement here in Addis Ababa in last February. And that is why we are meeting here today.
Signing of the framework was a milestone in our collective efforts to launch a definitive and comprehensive peace process backed by political will at the highest level. My special envoy, Mary Robinson, has called this agreement as a framework for hope. I fully agree that we really want to give a sense of hope through this framework. But we will meet the test of implementation only if all the signatory countries work together to end the political impasse and generate new momentum towards human security and economic development. I thank all the leaders in the region who hosted me and the President of World Bank, Dr. Jim Yong Kim, and my delegation during our recent visit, and who reiterated their commitments under the framework agreement. As I stressed at every stop and reiterate before you today, the international community stands behind you in ending the violence and truly and fully addressing the roots of the strife. The four witnesses who are here today to the framework, the African Union, the International Conference on the Great Lake region, the Southern African Development Community, and the United Nations will join hands to facilitate and carry the process forward. The UN Security Council has endorsed our comprehensive approach. The Council has strengthened MONUSCO's political military role, including through the deployment of a force intervention brigade aimed at neutralizing armed groups. President Kabila has also committed to a number of significant reforms in his country, which will require sustained efforts and support. I was pleased to learn from President Kabila that he had established the National Oversight Mechanism as envisaged in the framework, and he will personally oversee its work. I also commend the establishment of regional oversight mechanism among Angola, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and South Africa. Excellencies, the framework covers not only peace and security, but development, regional integration, and economic growth. But as Dr. Jim Yong Kim of World Bank and I emphasized throughout our trip, we must invest in the people of the Great Lake region who have suffered too much for too long. I welcome the added investment of $1 billion announced by Dr. Kim of the World Bank Group for the region to support social safety nets, cross-border trade, energy, and essential infrastructure. I believe that everyone will agree that peace cannot be sustainable without development. Peace is not possible without addressing the underlying causes of the problem. We have to give sense of hope. We have to give people something to eat, some decent jobs, and provide good sanitation, education, and health, human rights, and rule of law. Only on the basis of that, peace can be sustainable. Of course, without peace, you cannot promote development. Therefore, this peace and development should go hand in hand. That's the main reason why this time, for the first time in the history of the United Nations, that United Nations Secretary General and the President of the World Bank traveled together with the same mission. And we agree that even in the future, we will try to do that way, giving same sense of messages to the people who are still suffering in many other parts of this continent, including in Sahel. A genuine and collaborative political effort must now take place at the regional level. Special Envoy Mary Robinson, she has already begun working closely with the signatories. As requested by the Security Council, she is spearheading the efforts to define benchmarks on regional commitments, and will work to monitor progress in close dialogue with the governments of the region and my special representative, Roger Miss, in the DRC. Today, I look forward to hearing from you about the concrete steps you are taking to fulfill the regional commitments. Let us work together for the further implementation of the framework, and let us be able to report tangible, meaningful progress in the weeks and months ahead, and when we gather for our next meeting on the margins of the General Assembly in New York in September. Excellencies, this is a remarkable moment for the DRC and the region. The people in the region have suffered too much. I'd like to share my own experience, how much I was touched and moved when I visited Goma. I have been traveling all around the world, and I have visited so many places of the conflict, but not as much as in my experience. I was so much touched when I visited Goma. Thousands of people came out to the street with the small paper, handwritten small papers, "No to war. Please give us hope. We need peace." There were old, young, boys and girls, men and women, healthy and weak people. They were surrounding our motorcade, and they were surrounding my path. I believe that our senior advisors who traveled with me would have felt the same things. I was so deeply touched. I was thinking how and what we should do to give them sense of hope. I think this framework agreement could be a landmark one, but it's the minimum which we are doing. I think we should do more. We should do much more than this agreed framework agreement. But I think this is a good beginning. I felt that kind of feeling when I visited Juba, now South Sudan, before their independence. When I visited Juba at that time, there were tens of thousands of people lining along the street. Give us independence. They wanted to have that independence from the United Nations. And they wanted to, in Goma, the people in DRC, they wanted to have some help and assurance from the United Nations, from African leaders. And I'm just sharing this experience to you. So in that regard, this first meeting is a very important one. And from now, I think we will implement this one and meet again in New York during the General Assembly. I'll be welcoming you at that time. In any way, I really count on your strong political will to address this one. There were many such agreements in the past. Each time, people might have said that this is a landmark agreement. So we are sure that this time we will have peace in DRC. But each time that has been broken, I believe that this is really a landmark agreement. It has some special feature, special provisions and commitment, like introduction of intervention brigade. This is for the first time in the history of the United Nations peacekeeping operations. This has an enforcing capacity, enforcing mandate. And this has a national, regional oversight mechanism. Again, this is very new. So we are now trying to have broader, comprehensive, and new approaches. The development dimension is now added to this. This is again new.